This morning we're going to be talking about the nervous system, and I'm going to go ahead and tip you off to a question that's on the test. We talked about the muscles moving the skeletal system, and on some test, and I don't remember if it's this one or state board exam or what, there's a question of what system controls all the activities of the body. It is not the muscular system, it is the nervous system. Without it, nothing would work. We touch the hot stove, our hand would just lay there because our nervous system tells us to move it. We get ready to talk, we couldn't talk without our nervous system. Even our involuntary muscles would not work without our nervous system. So our nervous system is an exceptionally well-organized system that's responsible for coordinating all the many activities that are performed both inside and outside the body. Every square inch of the human body is supplied with these fine fibers known as nerves. We have over 100 billion nerve cells known as neurons. The science of the structure, function, and pathology of the nervous system is known as neurology. And I might tell you that science knows the least about the nervous system of any system we have. They're still exploring why some things occur. An understanding of how nerves work will help you perform services in a more proficient manner when administering massages and shampoos. It also will help you to understand the effects these treatments have on the individual. And we can actually make a person more nervous with our systems if we do them jerkily, or we're not relaxed, we're nervous. We're going to take to them whatever we have for the day. And if you'll remember back when we studied personality, we said that our personality must change with each individual client. So the last client we had made us real nervous and agitated, maybe even angry. We can't take that to our next client. It has nothing to do with her. The principal components of the nervous system are the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. It's divided into three main sections. The central nervous system, or cerebrospinal system, consists of the brain, the spinal cord, the spinal nerves, and the cranial nerves. It controls all our conscious activities, our voluntary functions of the five senses: seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, and tasting, and also our voluntary muscle actions, including all of our movements and our facial expressions. The peripheral nervous system is a system of nerves that connects the peripheral or outer parts of the body to the central nervous system. It contains both sensory and motor nerves. Its functions is to carry impulses or messages to and from the central nervous system. Excuse me. The autonomic nervous system is the part of the nervous system that controls the involuntary muscles. It regulates the action of the smooth muscles, glands, blood vessels, and our heart. The brain is the largest and most complex nerve tissue in the body, weighing about 44 to 48 ounces. Controls sensations, controls muscles, our glandular activity, and the power to think and feel. Sends and receives telegraphic messages through 12 pairs of cranial nerves. These 12 pairs originate in the brain and reach various parts of the head, face, and neck. And I always make a note, because this still kind of astounds me as many times as I've been through this. There's only 12 pairs of cranial nerves. But how many pairs of spinal nerves are there? 31 pairs of spinal nerves. The spinal cord is the portion of the central nervous system that originates in the brain. It extends down to the lower extremity of the trunk, and is protected with our spinal column. The 31 pairs of spinal nerves extending from the spinal cord are distributed to the muscles and skin of the trunk and limbs. And our limbs are considered our arms and legs, so if you're wondering what gets to your legs, that is your spinal cord or your spinal nerves. A neuron or nerve cell is the primary structural unit of the nervous system. It's composed of a cell body and nucleus. Y'all remember what the nucleus is in a cell? The internal part, the middle part. Dendrites, which are tree-like branching of nerve fibers extending from the nerve cell that receive impulses from other neurons. And an axon and axon terminal that sends impulses away from the cell body and other neurons, glands, or nerves. took a class on psychology maybe 3 years ago, and this kind of amazed me, something I learned about the nervous system. I'd always thought when something occurred and we needed to take an action that it was like an electrical shock. You know, I understood that you got to get an impulse from whatever you see, hear, feel to the brain, and then the brain sends us a message back, but it's actually a chemical drip. So it's quite amazing that it drips from one nerve to the other, and then that one drips in return to cause us to take an action. Nerves are whitish cords made up of bundles of nerve fibers held together by connective tissue, and this is where the impulses are transmitted. Nerves have their origin in the brain and in the spinal cord and send their branches to all parts of the body. We have our sensory nerves called afferent nerves that carries impulses or message from the sense organs to the brain, where sensations of touch, cold, heat, sight, hearing, taste, smell, pain, and pressure are experienced. Sensory nerve endings are called receptors, are located close to the surface of the skin. And you have more of them in your fingers, and that's good for us because we judge a lot about hair from the feel. We judge hair's texture by how it feels, not how it looks. As impulses pass from the sensory nerves to the brain and back through the motor nerves to the muscles, a complete circuit is established, resulting in the movement of the muscles. And that's what I was talking about a while ago. Something happens, and we get a message to our brain, and then the brain sends a message back of how to handle whatever happened. Motor nerves or efferent nerves carry impulses from the brain to the muscles. This transmitted impulse produces our movements. Mixed nerves contain both sensory and motor fibers and have the ability to send and receive messages. I always call the mixed nerves the smart nerves because they send it, they receive it, they do a little bit of all of it. How many of y'all have children or have been around children? You ever noticed you tell them not to touch the stove, it's hot? You keep telling them that, don't you? But eventually they touch it. Do you have to tell them to move their hand? No. You never teach them to move their hand. A reflex is not a learned thing, and it's not something we're taught. Once they touch it and realize you were really telling the truth, it's hot, they automatically will move that hand. So a reflex is an automatic nerve reaction to a stimulus that involves the movement of an impulse from a sensory receptor along the afferent nerve to the spinal cord, and then the response impulse along an efferent neuron to a muscle for that reaction. Now for the fun part. We're going to talk about our nerves of the head, face, and neck. The largest of the cranial nerves is the fifth cranial nerve, also known as the trifacial or trigeminal. It is the chief sensory nerve of the face and serves as the motor nerve of the muscles that control chewing. It has 3 branches: the ophthalmic, the mandibular, and the maxillary. Some of the branches of the fifth cranial nerve that we affect by massage are auriculotemporal. We got our words there again. A-U-R-I, what does it mean? Ear. Temporal, what does it mean? So we know where this nerve is located. The auriculotemporal nerve affects the external ear and skin above the temple and up to the top of the skull. Infraorbital. Inferior, what does that mean? Under. Orbital, where is that located? The eye area. Infraorbital affects the skin of the lower eyelid, the side of the nose, the upper lip, and the mouth. Infratrochlear nerve affects the membrane and skin of the nose. The mental nerve, we remember again where our mentalis was, now our mental's located there. The mental nerve affects the skin of the lower lip and chin. Nasal nerve affects the point and lower side of the nose. Supraorbital, there are some of our indicators again. Supra or superior is what? Above. Orbital, the eye area again. Supraorbital nerve affects the skin of the forehead, the scalp, the eyebrow, and the upper eyelid. Supratrochlear nerve affects the skin between the eyes and the upper side of the nose. Zygomatic. Where's cheekbone? Right back to the zygomatic bone or the zygomaticus muscle. So zygomatic nerve affects the muscles of the upper part of the cheek. Our seventh facial cranial nerve is the chief motor nerve of the face. It emerges near the lower part of the ear. It extends to the muscles of the neck. Its divisions and their branches supply and control all the muscles of facial expression. Some of the more important branches of the facial nerve are the posterior auricular. Posterior is what? Behind. A-U-R-I, the ear. Posterior auricular nerve affects the muscles behind the ear and at the base of the skull. Temporal. Where's our temporal? Affects the muscles of the temple, the side of the forehead, the eyebrow, the eyelid, and the upper part of the cheek. And we see the zygomatic again, so it's part of more than the fifth cranial. It's also part of the seventh. Zygomatic nerve affects the muscles of the upper part of the cheek. Y'all remember the buccinator, what it was a muscle of? Of the mouth, but what did it do with the mouth? Buccinator. The blowing. Buccinator affects the muscles of the mouth. Mandibular affects the muscles of the chin and lower lip. Where was our mandible at? Right along here. So our mandibular muscle affects the muscles of the chin and lower lip. Cervical nerves, which are a branch of the facial nerve, affect the side of the neck and the platysma muscle. Cervical nerves originate at the spinal cord. Their branches supply the muscles and scalp at the back of the head and neck. Greater occipital nerve. We remember where occipital is? Back here. So the greater occipital nerve is located at the back of the head. It affects the scalp as far up as the top of the head. The smaller or lesser occipital nerve is located at the base of the skull. It affects the scalp and muscles behind the ear. Cervical Cutaneous nerve is located at the side of the neck, affects the front and sides of the neck as far down as the breastbone. We have the nerves of our arm and hand. The digital nerve supplies what? What are our digits? The digital nerves with its branches supplies the fingers. Radial. Where's radial? Our thumb. So the radial nerve with its branches supplies the thumb side of the arm, also the back of the hand. The median nerve. It's a smaller nerve than the ulnar and radial nerve, but with its branches supplies the arm and the hand. Ulna, little finger. Ulnar nerve with its branches affects the little finger side of the arm and palm of the hand. Questions? We got some of this going now. A-U-R-I, ear. Supra. Orbital. Oculi. Temporal. We got questions?